I'm your host, Blake Rasmussen, and I have two fantastic guests with us today. We are going to have a little bit of a different focus for our second week of previews. We are going to focus on the art, and so I have two of our art directors with us, Zack, Stella, and Tom Jenkot. So before we get started, I know creating art for a set is really it's team sport. But what were your roles in bringing Bloomburrow to life?
So I was the art directing lead for this set. So I was kind of the overarching art director.
Okay, Tom?
Yeah, and I worked on the collectability components for this set, so working really closely with Zack and team. So.
Yeah, and we're going to focus a lot on the collectability. We're going to look at the Imagine Courageous Critters. So there's 24 total Courageous Critters. We're going to focus on the ones that are found in collector boosters today. There are 4, one in each commander deck, which you will see later when commander decks get revealed. We're not going to talk about those today, but the concept's the same. We're also going to talk about the special guests, which are Bloomburrowized versions of some favorite cards that are just fantastic. We're also going to reveal some starter kit cards, and then our final preview for the day is one final Calamity Beast that we're going to reveal at the very end of the stream. But we are going to kick things off with Courageous Critters, and specifically we're going to reveal a card that already has the internet talking. We just promoted its art, and it's fantastic. But before we get to that, tell us, Tom, about Courageous Critters, where that came from, the general idea.
Sure. Yeah, we're always trying to come up with interesting ideas that are accent and complement like the main set and do different things. We've done What If a few times, but we really try to be careful about it. We try to make sure.
Now, when you say What If, can you give an example?
Oh, sure. So when we try to imagine something that isn't like canon on the plane, but we see an opportunity to show something really fun, things that we would love to see, that we also know the fans would love to see. Okay,
what have we done in the past in that space?
So one other time we did it was for All Will Be One, with some of the Phyrexian-ized planeswalkers or legendary creatures from the plane. They technically hadn't been Phyrexianized, but we imagined them as such, mostly in the horror manga style, the black and white cards that we did.
Okay, and so for those who don't know, Bloomburrow, the plane, this is actually how the plane works, is a little bit special. If you come to the plane, you become animalized, animal folk, you change to fit the plane, which is really cool. And so all of these cards that we're going to show here are imagining what if this individual creature, planeswalker, whatever, made its way to the plane. So let's start with a tree. So this is Karn, the Great Creator. What is going on here?
Yeah, go ahead, Zach.
Okay, so as soon as we realized we had to put Karn here, there was really only so many solves for this. It wasn't originally evident from our story or things that have been revealed so far, but the trees on this plane, there are some trees that exist that they have metallized sap on the inside of them, and that's where all the animal folk actually get the metal that they make their weapons with, because there's a really low smelting point, and obviously when you're small, you want to have a low smelting point on your metal so that you can actually make weapons.
I love this sort of detail from the World Guide that maybe it gets out there, maybe it doesn't, but all of that background work. So yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah. So this was really the only place we could have put Karn where it would make sense world building wise.
Yeah, and it's just such a fun concept. It really led me to the artist Mike Burns in a lot of way for some of that levity.
His style is so naturally quirky that he was really the only person that could land the quirkiness of this concept.
And honestly, originally it had a little more levity. We had arms and legs, and we had to pull back a little bit, and I think we reduced the size of the squirrel too to make sure that Karn had some presence. Personally, the slide before this, where you know how planeswalkers always kind of break over the frame.
Yep.
Karn's just got a little bit of his branch breaking
Yep.
over the frame. We still had to do it. But that's one of my favorite parts of this.
So, you mentioned that when you found out Karn was in the set, can you talk a little bit about the selection process and what that back and forth is like for the list of courageous critters versus your art descriptions, how that works with the team?
Sure. I mean, like a lot of that's game design decisions at the start, and then most of it's like fitting a round peg into a square hole.
Yeah. Yeah, like we come up with like the idea for the component, and that creates some guidelines. But honestly, yeah, it's like they're trying to create, put together a collection of cards that's interesting to everybody, and then yeah, round peg, square hole.
Yeah, I mean, this one is probably the weirdest one of them.
It is definitely the weirdest one. The rest of these make a bit more sense. And they're not all planeswalkers. So let's take a look at our next card, which is Luminous Brood Moth, which is a different take on the Brood Moth that we have seen before. So tell us a little bit about how this card got Bloomburrowized.
So in this case, I feel like it went in a little bit of a Calamity Beast direction. It's clearly a giant moth in this case. One thing I love about the full art in this is like we get a very clear shot of what the bat folk homes look like. So you can really get a sense of the scale here because it's basically dwarfing the bats around it.
Yeah.
Yeah, those buildings are real cool. And Alex Horley, Orlandelli, really did a great job here. We pushed and pulled on the. We usually hear scale birds, but here we have scale bats.
Scale bats.
We had to make sure that the scale bats were just small enough to make this thing look, monster sized.
Yeah, and it was very important that we hit kind of like a traditional aesthetic on the painting styles for this set, and he just was like a natural fit for this.
Now, so a brood moth here. Some of the other ones we're going to talk about are animals themselves. So how do you give them that Bloomburrow twist when bringing that animal into Bloomburrow?
Yeah, it kind of depends on the animal. I mean, in this case, like the brood moth was great to fit and pair with the bats because all the animal folk kind of like have an insect that they like to accompany themselves with. For the bats, it is moths, just because there's that whole nocturnal aspect.
Yep, makes sense. All right, now we're going to look at a planeswalker. Move to a planeswalker. Let's see, we're going to show, just to set expectations here, 2 planeswalkers. We got 2 more planeswalkers to talk to today. One we're going to show now, one we're going to show at the very end of this section. So let's see, Narset, Parter of Veils. Zack, I know you were very keen on bird types in this set.
I was. Well, animal folk in general, all of the animals, I wanted to make sure that our species were widely varied. So it was kind of like going to the zoo where you could kind of collect your animal species.
Yeah.
In this case, on some of the planeswalkers, we wanted to make sure that their plane of origin was properly reflected in the kind of animal that they became.
Okay.
So Narset here is actually a red wattled lapwing, which is it's an Asian bird. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to be wondering why she was not a crane. I think we tried to avoid birds that were going to be like a little too big, where it was like riding the line of what a Calamity Beast was. But this was just a perfect bird choice for her.
Yeah.
How much, I don't know birds very well, but how much research did you do into different bird types, different animal types? Like, how much of that went into this?
A lot.
Yeah.
Part of it was just a refresher. Out of all the art directors on the team, I'm probably the one that's like the most nature-oriented.
Okay.
I've just like grown up with my face in all kinds of animal books, so yeah.
All right, very cool. All right, we are going to move on to an animal folk who is already an animal folk. We're going to see Ink Eyes, Servant of Oni. So again, this is, rats exist on this plane. This was a rat in another plane. So how do you Bloomburrowize Ink Eyes here?
Yeah, again, Zack, they set us up with some really good rat folk kind of like styling from the style guide. And this guy exists, was already a rat. Really what we had to do here is make him a little less lanky, make sure we get the weapons right, made from the surroundings and the found objects that they had. So.
Yeah, dehumanizing the anthro was a good portion of that, and then just making sure the scale came through, and in this case on the rat folk, it was like making sure all their weapons and tools were made from like insect parts and things that they would find in the marsh.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you're, there's the full art, great. So when you're writing up the art description for a piece like this that has a pre-existing, this is this character, but we want him to look different, how do you balance that in the art description?
Some of the costume cues have to carry through from the original. Like Ink Eyes always has that mask. We want to make sure that was something we retained.
Yeah, I think it's just side-by-side references with the artist. Again, Alex is a pro, but showing, the original Ink Eyes next to some of the style guide, rat anatomy, was really helpful just to get those tweaks just right.
All right. We're going to kind of stick in the same space because our next one is Marrow-Gnar. So if you're a rat fan out there, you are feasting on Bloomburrow. And this one seems to have a bit of a darker tone than a lot of the other ones, Zach.
Yeah, well, a lot of it, a lot of what I wanted to try and do with this set was just make sure that it's still read as a Magic the Gathering set. Like, it's cute animals, obviously, and they're going to be cute regardless of what they're doing, so we want to make sure that darkness and the things that are normally in a Magic set carries through. One of the things I love about this that we did was, like, the weapon was changed from just, like, a regular metallized ball and chain weapon to, like, now it's using, like, a spiky seed pod.
Yeah, that was the one. Really, honestly, that was the one change with this thing. It came in real strong, but we just needed to add that little moment.
Yeah, and Nestor just slays all the assignments we give him.
Yeah.
Now, that's a good question, and I think we're going to talk about that more, but when you're looking at artists for these types of pieces, is that sort of your normal artist pool? Do you have a pool set aside for the full art collectible pieces, or how do you determine the artists?
Well, it usually depends on the booster front treatment. In this case, just landing it in normal Magic style was house style was kind of like important.
Yeah, because we didn't really want to shift into a different art style because it was more about how these characters were envisioned as animals. Yeah. But as far as like approaching the artist pool, a lot of times we share. There was a moment in a card that's coming up where we were both kind of I don't want to say fighting. We were collaborating. It turned out great in the end, like where we both got what we wanted from this one artist, and it's interesting to like be on the same wavelength as we're picking our artists. Like we both want this one artist because they do it right.
Yeah, and it's definitely a delicate balance when the two styles between the booster fun and what we're doing in main set are kind of similar, just how we balance out that pool.
All right. The next card is gross looking, but I love it. So let's see, Ant Queen, and you can definitely pick up that green bulbous sack there, but the full art really pulls out the grossness. So, Zach, what's going on with this, with the Ant Queen here?
Yeah, this is another one that like Calamity Beast was kind of the direction to go in. Insects play a major role on this plane too, so when they're not being used for food, we want to make sure they're fairly intimidating.
Can we say zoom in and enhance here, or just get it right in on that growth?
Just get in on the green ball. I don't know that we want
in our internal art system, like this came in, and the first comment was, "Ew, I love it."
That's sort of how I feel. Like I like looking at it from a distance. If this was a real thing, like I wouldn't want to be anywhere near this. Yeah, cool. Ant Queen. All right. Next up, we have a reimagined classic. So this is Birds of Paradise. The art here, of course, is gorgeous, but Birds of Paradise has had a lot of different reprints, a lot with fantastic art. So how do you tackle a card like this that has so many different versions of it, many of which are beloved?
I feel like in this case it was like me and Neil LaPlante Johnson, who's our set lead, just picking whichever one our favorite pre-existing bird was, and then just like making sure that that visually carried forward.
Okay. And Zach, what kind of bird is this?
I mean, in this case, we actually did make it a real bird of paradise.
Real bird of paradise. Yeah. Okay. I do love also the birds all around it.
Yeah, that's my favorite part here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of the best cards for actually seeing their fashion, probably.
Oh.
Well, tell us about the bird fashion, since you brought it up.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily aviator goggles. I don't think there's any glass or anything on this plane, or at least not in any widespread use, but the birds, we wanted to make sure that they had some aviator-style mask that they could put on their faces. And the rest of their clothes is kind of like... it came up when I was working on bats at home. My wife has this very serious job that she was handling from the other room, and it was a very sharp contrast between what she was talking about on her end, and then from the other room she heard me say to the rest of my team, "So where are we out on the bat pants?" It was just something that we had to discuss widely among like flying creatures or things with wings, is like how does the clothing actually attach where it like makes sense around the form. So yeah, for bats and birds, they all have these like cloaks that sort of attach at the shoulders and hang down nice and loose and can flutter in the air and make some cool shapes.
No bat pants.
No bat pants.
All right. Let's see another bird while we're on the topic. We've got gilded goose. Thematic not only because it's a bird, but there's a food sub-theme in this set. So talk to us, Zach, about this gilded goose.
So this was, I feel like, interpreted fairly loosely in terms of like how gilded it was. We wanted to make sure that the gilding came off as like a little bit more of a realistic animal compared to on Eldraine when it was like literally gold.
And it's all surrounded by food. There it is, a feast.
Yeah, also very important to hit the general vibe of the set with the delicious looking food.
All right. Next up, we've got, this is, I love how literal it is taken. This is Squirrel Mob. Squirrel Mob. So with the flavor text, you're already surrounded. So obviously, fantastic place to bring this card back. How do you translate Squirrel Mob to Bloomburrow?
Well, I just want to say, so Justin Gerard's new artist for this set. I think he was a natural fit for the setting, and like he was one that we did not have to fight over because he took on so many pieces for this.
He really did. He kept asking for more, and we're like, sure, okay. But you can tell, like, he knew what he was doing. I mean, each of these squirrels, like zooming in on each of them is amazing. I particularly like the hesitant one in the back, second from the left. Just kind of like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, in the case of Squirrel Mob too, like just the fact that this had to be filled with squirrels. Justin's a pro at making sure that like everything in his pieces has its own character. So each of these animals really stands out.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, in a set of cards that has a ton of fantastic art, this one might be my favorite. This is Baleful Strix, obviously a super powerful card, but an artifact creature, which is not really a Bloomburrow thing. So talk about translating Baleful Strix here to Bloomburrow.
The artifact part of this had to come across as being managed by the animal folk themselves, so the materials had to be supernatural, which led to this just looking really cool and witchy.
Yeah, and I love that flavor text too. It came from Beyond Valley, not a calamity like the Great Maha, not animal folk. It was something new, which really speaks to its unique place. Yeah, and that full art is fantastic.
Yeah, and the artist did amazing work. They sent in like 5 different sketches, and this one was just the one. To me, the Baleful Strix here is like has just noticed you, and it's about to get real, right? Like it's a terrifying moment. That's why I loved it.
Yeah, it's great. It's just a killer piece.
All right. Let's see another bird that is slightly less terrifying. We've got Derevi, Imperial Tactician. So, this one seems to fit right into Bloomburrow. It looks like it could be among the bird folk. So tell us about Derevi here.
This is one where we kind of broke our rule about owls being specifically Calamity Beast. And I think it was the right decision here. People do love a bird wizard, and I think that was like a lot of it was like to keep the class type on it. It had to not be Calamity Beast.
Yep. So can you expand on that a little bit? You said owls were Calamity Beasts.
Yeah, mostly just in the case of size and the fact that they're very predatory.
So then what led you to make Derevi into an owl instead of some other sort of bird type? It was just because that's what Derevi was, or?
Yeah, I think it was important to like still translate the animal type that it originated as, just to make sure that it still was like very easily recognizable as the character it came from.
Yeah. All right. Next up, a fan favorite, and it was already a frog, which is great for the set. So here is the Gitrog monster. It is a frog horror. This looks to me like you made this a Calamity Beast.
Yeah. Frogs can get very large and scary, so I'm glad that carried through. Nils Ham is just a natural choice for the Gitrog.
He was perfect, and it's the second time he's done one. He did one for maybe it was a promo set on a what was it, Innistrad. There was some Eldrazi moments going on behind him. Yeah.
All right, we've got the full art there.
Yeah, it's really terrifying.
Yeah. What's going on with the runes on it? Have those runes on its back?
Oh yes, that was something that all the Calamity Beasts have as a visual motif.
Okay.
Just to make them a little bit more otherworldly and ethereal.
All right, very cool. All right, next up, we're going to lighten the mood a little bit with Ishai, Ojutai Dragon Speaker, Bird Monk. Zach, what kind of bird is this?
So this is not actually a real bird at all.
Oh, okay.
What?
And I actually painted the original Ishai. It's based off of these like sort of dragon-like cranes that are present on Tarkir. So in this case, it was less picking a real bird for this and more changing the shape so that it went from like a crane down to something that looked more like a songbird.
Okay. Now, did you do, you've been talking about bird types. Is this the only example of kind of a made-up bird, or were there other made-up birds?
I think Kaikar might be coming up as well, and I think we did something similar for Kaikar.
We are coming up on Kaikar. We're going to get to Kaikar in a second. In fact, we'll jump ahead to Quain, so we can get to Kaikar as well. So Quain, this one is interesting in that I believe Quain is native to Bloomburrow, correct?
Quain is now officially native to Bloomburrow.
All right, so then what, so, in this case, you're not changing something. This is just Quain. So how did you approach this one?
I think it was more a case of like trying to get the sense of community and some other things into this piece that obviously like the original Quain doesn't have now that we know what Bloomburrow is on a more grand level.
And pulling a strawberry out of a hat?
Yes, big fruits and vegetables was definitely something we wanted.
All right, and
cockroach watching in the front.
Yeah, that's a cute little addition. A little bug, just like, oh, look what he's doing. All right, chat is interested in Kaikar, so we're going to move on to Kaikar. The Wind's Fury, so obviously powerful commander spell, powerful bird wizard. What kind of bird is this, Zack?
So this was, again, like taking something that was like a large crane and just like shrinking it down a little bit to be more songbird sized.
Okay.
I love the magic in this. That's something that was very important to this setting, was making sure that the magic came through for the small scale. Especially in like a plane where like things can go a little bit naturalistic really fast.
Yeah.
Punching up the magic effects where they were like nice and loud and visual. Like Strixhaven's one of my favorite sets of all time, just for the fact that the magic is so blown out and loud. I wanted to make sure that that was carried through for Bloomburrow.
Very cool. Now, before we get to the last one, were there any either what ifs you would have liked to have done, anything that was left on the cutting room floor that you wish you could have done?
Oh boy. I think we hit a lot of the things I probably would have picked, honestly.
Okay.
More Calamity Beast stuff, maybe.
Yeah, just a whole set of Calamity Beasts would be great. Let's do that next time.
Bloomburrow 2, sure. Yeah. There we go. Calamity Beast Boogaloo. All right. Our final courageous critter for today is our last planeswalker. It is Teferi Time Raveler. This one's gonna be popular. Zach, what kind of bird is it? We're just gonna have a whole show. Zach, what kind of bird is this?
This is a secretary bird. Teferi's from Jalfir, which clearly has like kind of an African style origin to it. So we wanted to make sure that we picked an African bird for Teferi.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you go through like different iterations of we could do this bird or this bird or this bird?
Oh yeah, we had lists for Teferi. We had lists for Narset.
List for days.
Yeah.
This is the piece that is by Dimitri that both Zach and I were like on the same wavelength, like picking artists. We both reached out to Dimitri and ended up like collaborating and sharing him in the same wave.
Yeah, Dimitri just always hits and thankfully works very fast. So
yeah, I always love the presence. Like you can tell that like there's a brain behind like the eyes. Like they're so thoughtful and like piercing.
Yeah, just an all-around stellar piece.
Yeah.
How did you land on a bird for Teferi? Is it because Teferi's white-blue and that's the bird colors in Bloomburrow?
That definitely helped. I feel like we had discussed doing different animal types. It wasn't always just an initial choice to go full-on in on the bird for the white-blue, but yeah, it was a natural fit.
All right. Cool. So those are the Imagine Courageous Critters. There are 4 others that we've revealed publicly before this. So there's a Jace, there's a Liliana, there is a Chatterfang, and there is a Nissa. Frog Nissa is also great. So those can be found in collector boosters. And again, there are also going to be 4 other Courageous Critters, 1 each in the commander decks that you'll see as the week goes on. But now we're going to move on to special guests. So special guests, if you're not aware, are the list. They are for Bloomburrow the same thing. In the past, the list has included a lot of different things. For Bloomburrow, the list is special guest cards. And those can be found in both collector boosters and in play boosters. If they're found in play boosters, they will replace a common. So these are all cards you could potentially draft. So we're going to take a look at these. And again, the concept for special guests that we've seen before is they get set on the plane that we're on. So we get to talk about Bloomburrowizing. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. Some more cards. So let's see the first batch of 3. Swords to Plowshares, Ledger Shredder, which is just my favorite, and we're going to spend some time on that. And of course, like I said, rat lovers are eating good this set. So let's go left to right. Tell us about that Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah, so first off, Izzy was great on this setting. And I'm pretty sure Izzy still has some arts that have not been revealed yet. But we wanted to make sure that like the farming element came through. It was actually in one of the initial takes on Bloomburrow, we were discussing whether or not there were humans on this plane. That the initial pitch had like huge farming equipment that the animals lived in and stuff like that. So it was like, that was part of the pastoral element that sort of carried through. Just in the case of abandoning humans being the farmers, it just turned into animals after a certain point.
Yeah, which makes sense. If there's big farm equipment, someone had to have the farm equipment. All right, chat loves Ledger Shredder, as do I. So tell us about this bird advisor. What kind of bird is this, Zach?
So I forgot about the Ledger Shredder. This is another case of an owl originally that we eventually turned into an anthro animal. Voikambaga just is so good. I mean, this is one of my favorites of the lineup as well.
And then rat colony. Of course, rat colony seems like a natural inclusion here, given all the rats, given that, a lot of rat decks are going to have a lot of rat colonies. Yeah, another fantastic piece there. Anything to add on the rat colony?
Yeah, this is, so all the animal folk here on Bloomburrow wear a lot of like quilted materials. This is a great place to see that. It was something we baked in to sell the world building, that there's a sense of community, like each of the animals could potentially provide one square for each of these quilts where they would come together and make quilts for their communities and for their adventuring parties. Like if they have an adventuring party flag, like each of the squares on the flag would be made up of one square from each of the party members. And this is also just a great card to show off the coolness of the marsh and like the rat architecture in the background.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. And I know we're focused on art, but I also love how these fit into the draft environment. I mean, Swords to Plowshares is just Swords to Plowshares. It's going to be a great removal spell anywhere. But, Ledger Shredder, it's a bird. It has flying, so it fits into that, but it also fits into the black-blue archetype where you want to hit threshold and discard things. And of course, rat colony, if you're drafting rats, it's going to get bigger for more rats. So that one's pretty easy inclusion. Next up, let's see the next batch of 3 here. So we've got Relentless Rats, all the rats, Kindred Charge, and Sylvan Tutor. We're going to start from the other side because I know before the show you both were raving about this Sylvan Tutor.
Yeah, Scott Fisher.
Scott Fisher, he's just so good. I know you work with Scott all the time.
Yeah, I'm always surprised. Like I wouldn't have expected this when I first zoomed into this because I think that you commissioned this, right?
This one was either, I'm pretty sure Sam Padilla did Sylvan Tutor.
Well, when I first saw it, I like zoomed in and I'm like, oh, who's the artist here? Like not even registering right away because Scott's always going with fresh takes.
Yeah, it's always going to be a good quality piece of art, and you're right. You never quite understand what you're going to get at the end, but it's always going to be good.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Relentless Rats over there. More rat folk for the rat folk. Kindred Charge. What's we see our Sunspire Lynx in the background, a Calamity Beast. So what's going on in that art?
Yeah, this is one of the last pieces that Dawn Murin one of the last pieces she AD'd before she left WotC. So this is like probably one of the only shots that we have a mess of animal folk and the Calamity Beast they're fighting in the same piece of art. It's just great to see that like scale comparison and it ramps up the danger level.
Yeah, very cool action shot. We hear a lot about the Calamity Beasts and their clashes, but yeah, this is one of the few things depicting it. All right, next, last set of 3. 3? Yeah. All right, we have Toski, Bearer of Secrets, gets Bloomburrowized. Frogmite, I love that. I love that Frogmite art. And then Secluded Courtyard for, of course, your creature typal deck. So let's start with Toski, who is a squirrel and gets a little Bloomburrowized here, Zach.
Yeah, he was definitely a fan favorite, but there was elements of this we wanted to make sure that he retained as he got anthropomorphized, which was like his trademark mustache and beard and the runes on his tail.
All right, and then Frogmite. Tell us about this funny-looking Frogmite art.
So this is another case of like a weirdo artifact on this plane. I tried to put in some other constructs into the main set that are mostly plant-based, like the Mice Ride wicker mounts, and there's a raccoon card where they're like all walking in a living hedge.
Yep. I think that one was revealed today.
Yeah, so in this case, the frogs are all from Fountain Port. They really don't have much in the way of like natural artifice.
Okay.
So it's kind of built from the same sort of like metals and soapstones that Fountain Port is made from.
Yeah. And then what is that Secluded Courtyard depicting?
Secluded Courtyard is one of the places that we see many of the various architecture types all in one location. You have the round frog folk dwellings in the middle. The windmill was something we wanted for rabbit folk just because they're avid farmers. And I'm pretty sure there's like a birdhouse in there in the back. Oh no, it's actually right in the front. And some mouse homes and raccoon homes with those like the plant-based roofs on them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just a cool piece to actually get some world building elements that we're not.
Yeah, very cool. All right, so that's all of that. We are going to now move on to the starter kits. This one we'll go through pretty fast. We're just going to show off the 2 face cards, the reprints, and then the deck list will be posted on dailymtg.com later. But Zach, you were involved in the art descriptions for the 2 face cards, so we're going to talk about those. Let's see our first starter kit face card. Here it is, Bria Riptide Rogue. So Zach, tell us what's going on with this prowess otter.
She is a plucky thief. We wanted to make sure that there was like ample amounts of magic in her art, given her card ability. And in the case of both of these, they take place at the base of Fountainport, so that you're actually seeing the inside of Fountainport. Those globes in the roof are actually underneath the lowest tier of Fountainport. So there's like a ceiling of water that actually sits above that filters the light through.
Very cool. All right, next up, Burke, Long Ear of the Law. This set has so many puns, it's fantastic. So Burke is a 4/4 with Vigilance. It puts +1/+1 counters on other creatures and doubles +1/+1 counters. So Zach, tell us about the art on Burke here.
So anytime you see a rabbit yelling with its mouth open, they get real scary real fast. Great place to see the like metal dipped weapons for the denizens of this plane, and this is actually on the outside of Fountainport, around the docks on the outer edges. Fun thing with these two is Burke is chasing Bria because Bria's stolen something, so that's actually Bria's foot in the foreground.
Oh, nice. Very cool. All right, so starter kits are meant for newer players to get started and play against each other. So those are going to be 2 different decks that you can pick up and play them against one another. It's going to be pretty even. We are going to show some of the reprints. These are cards that are not in Bloomburrow, but are in the starter kits. So not in the main set of Bloomburrow, but you can get them in the starter kits here. They're all reprints, all with pickup art, so we're not going to spend a ton of time on them, but we can show them off real quick like. So we've got Sarah Redeemer, Charmed Sleep, Mind Spring, and Thieving Otter. You got to have a cheeky otter in there. As well as Flame Lash, Colossification, Giant Growth, Rabid Bite, and Sword of Vengeance, Blossoming Sands, Swiftwater Cliffs. The full deck lists for those will be up on dailymtg.com later, and you can check that out. And if you're interested in teaching someone how to play Magic or learning yourself, starter kits are a great way to start. Okay, before we get to our final reveal of the day, which is, yes, going to be the Blue Calamity Beast, if you have any art-focused questions for either Zach or Tom, go ahead and put them in chat. It helps me if you tag it at Magic, just so I can find it a little bit easier. And then we'll spend some Q&A time with whatever we have left, just asking all kinds of art questions or world building, treatment questions. Tom works on a lot of the different treatments and collectability aspects, so any of that sort of stuff we'd be happy to talk about, including one of the treatments that we're going to see here with Eluge, the Shoreless Sea. So this is the Blue Calamity Beast. It's an elemental fish for 1 blue, blue, blue. It's a star with power and toughness each equal to the number of islands you control. Whenever it enters or attacks, you get to put a flood counter on a land. It becomes an island in addition to its other types for as long as it has the flood counter. And the first instant or sorcery spell you cast each turn costs blue or 1 less to cast for each land you control with a flood counter on it. So creating floods. But we also see here these borderless field notes. So tell us about the borderless field notes treatment.
Sure, yeah. So this is this is a different take, a collectability component where we are imagining like somebody is studying these creatures from afar, right? And so very Audubon style, where they're detailing out the skulls or the different parts, the eyeball you can see, and you have some like kind of in-world scribbles there that are meaningless, but meant to look like they're of world. Just a really great take here. We're going to see some more of these. I don't know all the things. Not today. But like there are some more of these in the set. I don't know what's been revealed.
We've seen a number of these field notes versions for the Calamity Beasts. This, I have to check. We're pretty close to the last one, if not the last one. I'm not sure off the top of my head. Yeah. And
just a note that one of our newest ADs commissioned these, Jamila Walgren, sorry. She did a really great job here among other pieces. So.
Yeah, I love that treatment. It turned out so good.
All right, so I've got a bunch of questions in chat. Again, we're going to stick to art-focused ones. So some of the questions which are good, like why was this card not in the set, these guys might not know the answers to. So we're going to try to stick to art-related questions, or in this case, a comment. Magic, the art direction of the set has been incredible. Thank you so much. No question, just question about any serialized cards in this set. No, there are not. What's the status on Bat Pants?
The status of Bat Pants was no Bat Pants.
No Bat Pants.
No Bat Pants.
No Bat Pants.
I don't think there's any Bat Pants.
This is a question about why something is where, so you may not have an answer to this one, but I'll ask it anyway. Why is Toski not an imagined critter and is instead a special guest? Did you have any insight into that? If not, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't know. That might be a game design decision.
Game design decision. There you go. Here's a good question. Why are so many planeswalkers birds? Why keep them to the color identity when they are part of the set? E.g., why is Narset a bird?
I think we tossed around a few other creatures for Narset, and it was just a natural fit for what I thought would come from the Jeskai.
Okay. Because she is Jeskai on her home world, that makes sense. They had actual birds in that set. Let's see. Any plans for secret layers with Bloomburrowized guys?
I don't know.
Okay. Let's see. Were there any planeswalkers you wanted to add that didn't make it in? We kind of asked this earlier, but specific to planeswalkers, when you were creating this sort of concept of the courageous critters, were there any planeswalkers that you used to ideate?
I think there were a few others we discussed that ended up getting not in this lineup for other various reasons.
Okay. If we had created them, what animal, in your opinion, don't hold it to anything if we do this in the future, but what kind of animal do you think Obnixilis or Nicol Bolas would be?
I feel like I don't know about Ob. Ob would probably go in the direction of Bat very easily.
Okay.
Yeah. A Calamity Beast?
Yeah, Bolas feels very Calamity Beast.
Yep.
Like, even though he's very smart, I feel like he might be the one that bridges the gap. He'd be an intelligent Calamity Beast.
Okay. I feel like this question, it's not aimed at anyone specific, but I feel like it's for Zack. What's your favorite bird art? Bonus if it has a hat in its art.
Mockingbird.
Mockingbird?
Yeah, and it does have a hat. But it's not a bird hat.
Next question. Are there any other characters like Quain who we are learning are from Bloomburrow? Quain's friend, also.
The turtle.
The turtle.
Arkelos.
Arkelos, yes. Yeah. When do we return to Bloomburrow? Let's go there. People love the set. Let's go there once first, and then we'll see. Zach, you may or may not know the answer to this question, but I have seen variations of it around the internet. Was Bloomburrow invaded by the Phyrexians? Do we know anything about that?
I can't answer confidently. I'm pretty sure we're leaning on no.
Okay. All right. So don't take that as 100% gospel.
Yeah.
But
I'm pretty sure it's a no.
okay. All right. Zach, this is specific to Zach, but we'll ask it to Tom as well. And maybe it's the same answer as before. What is your favorite art, period, made for Bloomburrow?
Oh, I can't single out
know,
any one piece. If I think about the one that actually like really encapsulates everything that the set is going for, it's that mouse that Chris Ron did.
Okay.
The red mouse
Yep.
with the snake coiling around it in the dark, holding up its fire sword.
Yep. I forget what that one's called, but anyway, it's a red card. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Perfect balance of danger level and tiny heroism.
All right. Tom, do you have an answer?
I don't know what's safe to say. I don't know what's been revealed and what's been previewed, and yeah, so I'm going to take the fifth.
All right, another courageous critters inspired question. If Gideon was an animal, what animal would he be? I have an opinion on that one, but I want to hear from you guys.
I know he's not this, but and we don't ever do white turtles, but I feel like a turtle feels right for Gideon for me. I don't know why.
Very protective shell, yeah. Tom?
Well, it has to be a bird, right? Everything's a bird.
Everything's a bird. It's birds all the way down.
I know we don't have them. I mean, it'd be a dog, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking like a bulldog kind of protective.
Yeah, bulldog or like a mastiff or something, and that's very like protective and yeah.
Yeah, they always have that sacrifice theme, unfortunately, and
they do.
Gideon, too bad.
Gideon as a dog already exists. It's called Selfless Savior. You're welcome. Let's see. When will we get a Q&A about MTG Arena? I can look at the upcoming schedule. I don't have anything on the schedule right now, but let's see. All right. Why is Ledger Shredder an owl when he wasn't before?
That is a good question. I did not write the concept for Ledger Shredder.
Okay.
I feel like it matches fairly well just in the realm of owls often being associated with knowledge.
Yep.
But yeah, I feel like I could have gone either way on what the bird ended up being, so long as it was still a bird.
All right. I don't know if we've said this publicly or even if we know the answer. What happens if a character, so if you don't have an answer for this, that's fine, Zach. What happens if a character from Bloomburrow goes to another plane? Do they transform into a human? Do they stay the same?
I think the only thing we've said on that so far is they do not turn human.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I see a lot of the questions about the blue mana discount on the Calamity Beast. That's not really their area, but if you want to ask it on social media, I'm sure someone from our rules or game design team can answer that. Let's see. When and where will the Commander deck lists be revealed? Commander deck lists are coming up if you check. So if you have questions about where and when something is going to be revealed, head to dailymtg.com or just Google where to find Bloomburrow previews. That's going to list all of the outlets and dates and all of that. So when the Commander decks go up from the outlets, the external outlets, then on our website we will post the full deck list as well. Good question. Will the Imagined Critters be in play boosters or collector boosters? They are in collector boosters, with the exception of 4 of them, which are found in the commander decks. Each commander deck has 1 Planeswalker reimagined. We already have seen Tamio, and there are 3 others. Zach, you don't have to answer this, but the art is awesome, but how do you get around the fact that birds aren't real?
Well, neither are most of the things on Magic cards.
Yeah. All right. Here's a good question. What was the, this jumped and I lost it, but the question was, I think, what was the most challenging thing to keep consistent throughout Bloomburrow art, I think was the question.
Scale, and we had very extensive notes on the level of anthro.
Okay.
When things went a little too human, I would always have to like dial back the anatomy a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd agree with the anatomy and a lot of the facial structure too, making sure it didn't go too cute. Like there was something, there's a line.
Yeah, on the concept push, I had April Prime and Aurora Folney and one other person just doing like straight up lineups of like animal anatomy and facial emotion ranges on their like how wide their smiles could go before it turned into a cartoon versus like an actual animal smiling.
Yeah. Cool. All right. That someone says this is stolen from Twitter. I'm just going to read it. It's funny. You can answer it if you want, I guess. If Sir Ginger travels to Bloomburrow, does she become an animal cracker?
I like it. Yeah, sure.
Here's a good question that because we don't show any of these. What happens to planeswalkers that are already anthropomorphic, so like a Johnny, Angrath, when they planeswalk to Bloomburrow?
We're not going to cover that.
We're not going to cover that. All right. Maybe for Bloomburrow too. A Johnny's Boogaloo. Let's see. Trying to find. Again, we're trying to stick to art questions. I see some good questions in here about the makeup of commander decks and starter kits and all that sort of stuff. But we have our art experts here, so we are going to stick to that. Zach, you may know the answer to this. I'll ask it. If you don't know or if we can't say, you can say so. Was it ever revealed or confirmed that Chatterfang was from Bloomburrow, or is he native to a different plane?
Chatterfang's in the... He's one of the special
He's
guys,
one of the
right?
courageous critters, yes.
I'm pretty sure his previous card references elves.
Okay.
So he is not native.
There we go. Let's see. Okay, why is the Frogmite a robot, but the Strix wasn't?
Just natural fit, trying to keep it in the range of Calamity Beast that was still kind of scary.
Okay.
And just like the fact that the frogs don't really have natural materials that they use in their constructs.
Okay. People love imagining what if, so we'll get your opinions on these two. What kind of animals would Gix or Yawgmoth be if they came to Bloomburrow? Calamity Beast, almost certainly.
Oh man, that's a tough one.
Yawgmoth eventually became like a death cloud, so
yeah,
like,
that's exactly what I was thinking.
some swarm of mosquitoes or something sounds awful.
Okay. Did the artists get specific, and Zach, I think this is for you, did the artists get specific direction on what subspecies to depict some animals as? So when you were talking about, for example, what species of bird, did you get very specific and like, we want Teferi to be...
I did, yes. And it was a massive headache for all of the concept writers.
That was helped along with some good reference images too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of
That was
reference
huge.
searching.
Since birds were out of the question, you mentioned scale a couple times, and we talked about scaled bats at one point. But the question is, since birds were probably out of the question, what was used to provide a sense of scale?
Insects did a lot. In the case of pieces that had no other bugs or anything that was flying around, like we could press on the camera aspect. I forget what that term is, where it's like short range.
Yeah, I forget too.
You could like blur out the foreground or the background, and it automatically makes things look really tiny.
Okay. All right. This is an interesting question. It's not about any of the art we looked at today, but Bloomburrow has some seasonal art with the basic lands and with Three Tree City. The question is, were there ever more seasonal art cards originally?
Art cards, no, but I did want a lot of seasonal elements in the set.
Okay.
I tried to actually press on game design to try and get like something seasonal, like
Okay.
actually into the game mechanics, and it just didn't follow
Work
through.
out? Yep.
Yeah, it just
Okay.
would have been way too complicated. But yeah, I tried to press it where I could.
Okay. Let's see. Just a comment, the Phyrexians knew better than to try to invade Bloomburrow. Let's see. What animal would Blake be on Bloomburrow? So we actually answered this last week. I would be either an otter or a rat folk, which feel very different, but they're both appropriate. Well, I mean, someone asked that exact question. So that was for me, but what about you two? If you went to Bloomburrow, what would you turn into?
I previously said aspirationally a mouse.
Okay.
I think I'd actually be a weasel.
Okay.
I'd probably be a rat.
A rat.
Yeah.
All right. We have time for just one more question. Let's see if we can find a good art question. I see a good question about the different types of animals, but I think that's more of a game design sort of question. More speculating on what different planeswalkers would be. And then we might be... Okay, great last question. Here we go. What was something early on in the concept process that changed the most, and what was something that stayed from the start?
Okay, so stayed from the start. Squirrel Necromancer, the first concept I got in, was almost exactly what we ended up with. It
Okay.
was just nailed it in one.
Yeah.
Something that changed. Let me think. A lot of things the artists were just vibing on, so they hit the concept pretty early. Frog costuming, I think, went through a lot of iterations before we could get
Frog pants?
Yeah, frog pants. Yeah, and the bats, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
bat pants.
Trying to land on what we were doing with the
Pants
bat
on
clothes.
animals are tough. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We had to decide whether or not that was going to be like an overarching thing. Like, was it cool if some of the animals were wearing pants and some of the animals were not?
Yep. Like, does the concept of pants exist on Bloomburrow? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Pants. Pants is the thing that changed the most. All right. That is all the time we have. Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Tom, for tuning in. Thank you, or for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. Bloomburrow previews continue the rest of this week, today, tomorrow, and Thursday, with the full card image gallery going up on Friday. Next week, we will be back with opening Bloomburrow. We're going to open some packs and talk about what shows up in what different pack and what you can get ahead of the pre-release, which is happening next week, starting that Friday, the 26th. I believe that's correct. And then Bloomburrow releases globally the week after that. So stay tuned for previews around the internet the rest of this week, and we will see you next week.